First, we got Dr. Al Mohler, who wrote a piece called Black Lives Matter, Affirm the Sentence, Not the Movement. Now, we have these pieces for you on your screen. If you just look below, you can actually open these up and follow along with us as we read these. So, Josh, I thought this was really interesting because a lot of the discourse that I'm hearing among Christians is so polarizing, right? So it's either Black Lives Matter or something like Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter. And there's not even, it seems, an interest in meeting in the middle. So one of the things I appreciated from Al Mohler as he starts this is saying, look, I get the sentence. This isn't somehow a denial of every other life. It's not that white lives don't matter, or it's not that police lives don't matter. Rather, it's saying, hey, can Black lives matter too, as well as the other ones, in particular with reference to police brutality. And so he gets that, right? And I really appreciate that. And so here are some of the strengths. In essence, his thesis is this. We should affirm the sentence, Black Lives Matter, because it's true that people of color are created with value and dignity by God, their image bearers. But we should not affirm the movement, because the movement is based on what's called critical race theory, or some areas of study that are based on Marxist beliefs. And so the logic goes like this. Black Lives Matter is inextricably tied to Marxism. Marxism is antithetical to Christianity, therefore Black Lives Matter is antithetical to Christianity. That's kind of the way his logic goes. And then what he does in this article is he breaks down the ways that the belief statement for the Black Lives Matter movement has ties or nuances or inklings of Marxist thought.
Yeah, that Marxism is like a real big boogeyman in evangelicalism.
It is. It's like an allergy, right?
Yeah.
So here are some strengths that I saw. One thing that, like I said, I think he was thoughtful and charitable in understanding and not being willfully ignorant of misrepresenting what people are saying when they hold a sign that says Black Lives Matter. Another strength I saw was, listen, it probably is true that identifying people primarily by their economic or social or power structure in society, that probably isn't the best way to identify people. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's cool. We can agree on that.
Yes.
Now, here are some assumptions that I saw with Mohler that I thought were really interesting and fascinating to me. First is, it seems that his operating method here is that Black Lives Matter is a homogeneous or a really singular strand DNA in every single manifestation. And so that's something I thought was really thought-provoking, because like, what do you think? When you see BLM, is everybody saying the same exact thing every time?
No, I mean, you have a wide variety of beliefs within the BLM umbrella, right? From people saying we don't want to defund the police, for example, entirely. We want to reallocate funds, to people making statements as, as far out as saying, ACAB or whatever, like all cops are, bad people, right? And that we have to defund the police entirely and just get rid of the movement. So it's not monolithic by any stretch of the imagination.
Good. So that was interesting to me, because the way I read it, it seems that his assumption of saying we cannot affirm Black Lives Matter as a movement is, well, that looks exactly the same every time.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. The second assumption I thought was really important is that any philosophy or way of thinking that isn't explicitly Christian should not be validated in providing truth claims or making statements that we should acknowledge as Christians.
So specifically their Marxist influence?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought that, again, thought-provoking, right? Like, how should we engage that as Christians? Like if I have an atheistic professor of math, or if I have an atheistic history professor, by virtue of them not being Christian, does that invalidate their claims to truth? I think that's interesting.
Well, it seems to kind of, ignore Romans 12, right? The idea of being in the world there, but not necessarily of the world, right? And so you can be in the world and still learn from people who have a different set of belief systems than you, I would imagine, right? It seems like we do it fairly often.
Right. And so there's consequences to that, right?
For sure.
I think the implications here, as the argument goes, in the Mohler article, he breaks down the belief systems that are tied to what's called critical race theory or Marxism, and on that basis, he says we cannot affirm that movement. So here's some consequences I see from that. As I mentioned, if we invalidate any claim to truth or any knowledge from a source that isn't Christian, what are we left with? It seems to me like a really truncated worldview, right? Because the Bible doesn't have a whole lot to say about farming, doesn't have a whole lot to say about engineering and doesn't have a whole lot to say about economic systems, right? And so if I cannot count any sources that are not Christian vis-a-vis evangelicalism, it leaves me at a very limited source of knowledge.
I don't know, man.
Right?
The Amish are doing just fine.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think those would be my areas for concern with this. Like, I get it. Like I said, these conservative evangelical circles are the ones that I wade in, right? Like my colleagues, the pastors at my church, I get it. My concern would be, hey, if there's no room for nuance and it's an all or nothing take, then we're not even willing to play ball.
Right.
And that seems like an uncritical position in terms of if I'm 20, if I'm trying as a young adult to engage and figure out my place in society, that makes it really hard as a Christian to be engaged when all I'm hearing is you can't affirm anything that isn't wholly Christian.
Yeah, and the bigger fear that comes along with that is, why are you even going to listen then? Because if you are of this kind of convinced mentality that you can't learn from people who aren't followers of Jesus, then you're not going to be able to listen to what people have to say. And then you can't really do that much type of genuine evangelism in terms of relational life living with people who have different sets of beliefs with you. And so it not only is it a non-starter, it's kind of like a passive condemnation on people who don't follow the same sets of beliefs and kind of core values that you hold.
I definitely see that, and I could see how we can get there.